Hey, it's Arcadia, your screen time squad mate. Welcome to Infinite Halls, where we explore the endless twists and turns of parenting in the digital age. The guilt, the joy, and the completely unexpected. I'm a former video game exec and a mom who's lived the screen time battle from every angle. Around here, there's no judgment, just real stories and understanding. All right, today's episode is called Unboxing a Future. It's a story of a girl, a squishy toy business, and a mother who had to confront a hard parenting question. When does rule breaking signal a problem, and when does it signal readiness? Christine's daughter, Mimi, didn't just use screens to play. She used them to experiment, sell, market, and test ideas about value and trust, all before she was 10 years old. What began as slime videos and squishy toys became an early education in entrepreneurship, and what began as parental concern became a lesson in restraint, in knowing when to intervene and when to step back. This episode isn't about permissive parenting. It's about managing disobedience without crushing momentum and recognizing purpose when it shows up early and a little messy. Christine, welcome to Infinite Halls. I have wanted to tell this story for a very long time. Before we dive into Mimi, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, your family, and the context in which you were parenting at the time.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Arcadia. So I think we first talked about this story. I don't remember. We were connecting. I was working at the school and you were at the PTA, and we were just talking about screen time stuff. I have 4 kids, and number 3 is the very entrepreneurial one. And I only say that because she started off with this business. I've been working mom, and I've always felt that I have been permissive with screen time and obviously a little guilty. So only when I told you this story did I actually feel maybe a bit better about that, if that makes sense.
It's funny that you should feel better about it because I was like, this kid is awesome. So incredible.
So funny. So my daughter Mimi is very precocious. She dabbled in the performing arts, and she got herself into Youth Arts Foundation, which actually works with a lot of schools here in Hong Kong. She made friends with other kids in other schools. And she basically figured out she could sell squishy toys to other kids on Instagram, which, I think this was like 7 years ago, which back then I had no idea really what it was. So long story short, she figured out that she could use it to sell squishy toys. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that she was doing this until one weekend I went up to her and I said, "Hey, Mimi, what do you want to do?" She was turning 11 at this point. And she said, "Oh, I would love to go to Sham Shui Po." And I said, "Oh, that's odd. We were living in mid-levels, right?" And I was like, "Okay, let's go to Sham Shui Po." I hadn't been to Sham Shui Po in so long. So we went, and as we were coming out of the MTR, she basically said, "Okay, well," I said, "Where should we go?" I figured she had like some cafe or some place to go to. And she was like, "Oh, how about we go here?" And I was like, "Okay." And then, we walked maybe 2 blocks, and she was like, "Oh, look at that building over there. It says Dragon Center." And I said, "Okay, so let's go in there." I was like, "I've never been there." And she goes, "Oh, well, let's see what it is, Mom." Like she was a really good actress.
Yeah.
And me as a parent, I was just kind of like, this is cool. I'm having a really nice, cozy little date with my 11-year-old. So we went in, and Dragon Center, if you've ever been there, is like 11 floors. So I was just going up the escalator and being like, "Oh, this is cool. I'd never been there before." I was like, "Where should we go? Which floor do you want to go on?" She's like, "It's just keep going up." And then we kept going up until the 8th floor.
Yeah.
And we walked into these it's like a rabbit warren of little stalls. And that's when all of a sudden the shopkeeper started greeting her like she was an old friend. They were like, "Oh, you were like, I mean, they were speaking Cantonese, but somehow, and she doesn't speak Cantonese. So somehow she was communicating, and she was at the same time a little embarrassed, but they were like, "Oh, and they started giving her stuff." And I was like, "What is going on, Mimi?" They were showing her because she had ordered stuff from them. That's why we were there. That was the mission. So after like 10 minutes of this, where she was basically like doing business with these shopkeepers, I was like, okay, that's when it dawned on me. I was like, this is not the first time you've been here.
You've
This whole
been
ruse.
here before.
So we had made this arrangement since we live in Hong Kong, not something I would feel super comfortable with if we were in the US. But since we were living in Hong Kong, she was able to commute to rehearsals and places by herself. But I had never let her go all the way into Sham Shui Po.
Right.
She'd say, oh, can I go to Causeway Bay or do this? And I'd say, yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yes,
It was
I will
obvious.
pause. I'll pause for a
Yeah.
second just to give context about what this means for a lot of my listeners who don't live in Hong Kong. There's
Right.
Hong Kong Island, and then across Kowloon Bay is where it's Kowloon, right? And that's where Sham Shui Po is. And so Hong Kong Island, it's really
Yeah.
small, relatively.
You cross a harbor.
Yeah,
to go
you have
there.
to cross a harbor. It's almost like if we were going from New Jersey into New York, right?
Well, yeah, it's
Or-
real Chinatown.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more bustly, less organized, I suppose, right? And so Sham Shui Po is the heart of a lot of these small, crafty businesses and things along those lines. It's a very entrepreneurial space. It's a very safe city overall, even on either side of the bay. But when you go across the bay, it's an extra little like farther away, right? And so that's a very typical rule that parents would have.
Yeah.
You wouldn't dream of going to Kowloon, right?
No, I never really went to Sham Shui Po.
It's quite like Kowloon.
Unless you
over
live there.
Kowloon.
Right,
Exactly.
Yeah, because
So-
Hong Kong side, you would have all that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that's interesting about this is that she figured out that if she went to Sham Shui Po, she would get a higher profit margin because she was having this business of squishies. You could buy them like a 10-minute walk from our house. We lived in mid-levels and could just walk to Central. She could go to any of the little stores over there. But she figured out that for her to sell things to people or in other schools, she could pair the fact that she had a somewhat permissive parent, me, who wasn't home from 3:30 to 6:30, and that she could use that to go somewhere else in order to sell things to people who were not able to do that or who were not savvy enough to do that.
Then they have much more selection, right?
Yes.
And I think that that's also a very important thing.
So Sham working things out with shopkeepers and getting hard to find squishies. So the videos that she ended up posting on Instagram where you would watch a squishy slowly rise,
Yeah.
because apparently that was a really hot thing for kids. Is like the slower the squishy rises, the higher quality it is and all
Yep.
of that. And
Yep.
then she was into this whole thing where she was apparently working it out with the shopkeepers that she would get like special croissants, which are like this big, or like special pineapple buns, which are Hong Kong buns, which are special things that you don't usually find. So when I realized this, like I was there in the middle of it with her, with all these people. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, you obviously have been here before. I was like, Mimi, you have been lying to me. And she was like, I know, I'm sorry, Mom, but I figured out that I could make more of a profit if I buy it near our house and it's a lot more expensive. And then if I resell it, I don't have as much of a profit. But if I go all the way to Sham Shui Po, they have so many more things and I get more of a profit. And after that, I remember pausing and just being like, okay, I'm getting over the fact that as a parent, I'm really mad that my 11-year-old just lied to me and has been lying to me. And probably actually thinking about it has lied on Instagram, because I'm pretty sure that 10 and 11-year-olds are not, and even now are not supposed to have Instagram accounts. So that's when I just really had this reflective moment. What do I do? Do I ground her?
Exactly.
Do I ground her for doing something, which is what I told her to do, which is do something creative, do something productive online. Don't just use it for brain rot.
Yeah. And the other part of you is like, I am full on impressed with my daughter understanding profit margins and understanding.
And of course, there's a little bit of that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I was like, which is more, like the pride that the fact that she's done this, she didn't learn this from school. I was like, that's so cool. I work in her school, by the way. She didn't learn this from school. But at the same time, I was just really upset because I was like, this kid has been lying to me. This is terrible. What else is she going to lie to me about in the future?
Okay, before we really unwrap that situation about how we're managing screen time, rules, communication, and relationships, I want to go back to something you said previously. I think there's something really fascinating there. You talk about for parents who are working, the witching hour, particularly when it comes to screens and technology. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Before that moment, you thought you had set up the rules the right way in the rule book of how you're supposed to manage these tools. How did that intercede with the witching hour?
Okay, so Arcadia, I work in education, so I try to do everything textbook. Like I have in my notes an ancient agreement, like a contract
Mhm.
between me and the kids, what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, all this other stuff. I had a conversation with them about pornography. I tried to have a very kind of what do you
Aggressive
call it? Like a
idea.
so
Yeah,
like an
forward
idealistic.
thinking.
I feel like I've been reading about it
Yeah.
and of course trying to do this at home, but at the same time there is that time. One of the things that I tried to do as a parent is I would fill up that time with arts activities. If I'm not home, then she's obviously doing something. She must have been between shows,
Mhm.
or it might have been during a day that she wasn't doing this. The other thing that I tried to do is say things like when the kids were young, you could record yourself or you could record things, but you have to use my computer. So they
Okay.
would use the
Mhm.
photo booth app. And as a result, I have lots of videos on my computer where they're doing this stuff. So I was trying to do that, but at the same time, I just don't think you can know everything.
Mhm.
I think you can try your best to have a really good relationship with your kids, but you just can't know everything. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things I realized as a parent was maybe that's a good thing. Like, thought it was a good thing because if I'm being honest, especially moms, if I knew that she was running a business before she was running a business, I would be like, let's try to do this together.
Right.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you
Yep.
do this? And I would do everything I could
Mm.
not to have her fail at the business.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
as it is, that's not the best thing because I'm not a business person.
Mhm.
I don't even know where I would be Googling that stuff, whereas she was just actually learning from experience.
Right.
And now she's doing fashion business. And even though she was very active in the arts, singing, performing, and all of that, she made a very conscious decision. I was like, don't you want to go to performing arts school when you go
Yeah.
to college? And she was
Yeah.
just like, no. She was like, I don't want to do that. I'll do that for fun, but I don't want to do it for work. I think she knew about herself that she didn't want to depend on the pressure of singing and performing and all that. She just wanted to do that for the love of doing it. But she was just
Right.
like, I like business because she had dabbled in the business world on her
Right.
own and proceeded to open up a few other businesses too.
Well, I mean, once everything I was out in the open, she was able to talk
Yeah.
to you and explore the full scope of what it meant that she was doing. She discovered her passion. She discovered what she's good at, right? She understood sourcing, pricing, packaging, marketing. It must have really surprised you how serious and thoughtful she was about it.
Yeah. And how thorough, I think. So after this squishy thing, she
Yeah.
also had this little thing with slime where she was trying to give the slime different names, make it something else, and which is, I think, really just marketing because it's
Yeah.
not pink glitter. It's like unicorn poop or whatever it
Yeah,
is that
right.
you want to call it. So that's fun. But then things really took off when she was 15 and she was on Instagram. And of course, like every parent, I'm freaking out about Instagram because you're seeing all kinds of things.
Mm,
And this is way back, I think 2018,
mm,
2017,
mm.
2018, I want to say. And she was more attuned to the fact that you could sell stuff on Instagram. So I don't know if people remember the whole Brandy Melville trend that
Yes.
was, I think, here in Hong Kong. Of course, it was in the US before,
Yeah.
but she figured out she could buy things online
Yeah.
directly from China. And this is a girl who was taking Mandarin classes but couldn't really read or understand Mandarin, but she taught herself Taobao Mandarin. Taobao is basically the direct seller from China, way cheaper than Amazon. It's like
Yeah.
super,
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
direct. It brings you
Yeah.
directly to the sellers.
It's
And
like
she figured
Timu
out
on steroids.
it is.
Exactly.
And now Taobao is very user friendly for Western people because there's a translator. But
Yeah.
back in 2018, there
Yeah.
was no translator.
Nothing.
Like you literally had to sometimes screenshot. So this girl was working hard
Yeah.
to communicate with the sellers. And that was more Mandarin learning than she ever got in school. She had a goal, and the
Yeah. It was
goal
purpose
was,
driven.
yeah, she was just like, I want to make a profit. I've identified that I can buy things directly from the manufacturer. She was selling clothing to fellow teenagers or preteens and girls and etc. And she had made this very sophisticated Instagram store.
Yeah.
It's called Style Icon HK. She ordered packages for herself, like
Yeah.
signature packaging. She was using the highlights component of Instagram appropriately. Like she was like, these are the things that I'd made. And there's like, so she was super thorough about everything. And I think one of the things that she really learned is customer service, like how
Mhm.
important it is that as a seller, you have integrity, like you buy this, you're selling it, this is the price you're doing it for. And then, you tell someone you're going to mail it that day, you're going to mail it that day. But again, if
Yeah.
I had micromanaged it, I might have been like, let's get you some logos printed out, or let's
Right.
get you to doing this. But she figured that out on her own, and I'm really happy for her.
Yeah. And then it led her down a path. You briefly mentioned the fact that this is what she's studying in college. And can you tell me the exact thing that she's studying?
She's at Fashion Institute of Technology, and she's doing fashion business. One of the assignments that she just shared with me, because she knows I like Margiela, is that she was a buyer for Margiela. And
Mhm.
she said, these are the things I would buy from this season. This is how many units I would buy. This is what I would price it as at. These are the things that I would display in this store, and this is how I would display it. So that's all stuff that, I mean, she did on a very micro scale, like
I mean,
just
that's
having this.
exactly. And she was also
Yeah.
doing that already in some way, shape, or form, but out of instinct and knowing the voice of her customer because she was a teenager, right?
Knowing the voice of her customer, one of the things I remember seeing was she was starting to have influencers. Some people she knew had 1,000 followers. These are kids in Hong Kong.
That's
Friends
amazing.
she
Yeah,
knew.
yeah.
She knew that if she said something, then they
Mm.
would tag her store. She would sometimes give a discount code if you reference
Oh
her.
my goodness.
So
I want to take a quick pause and share something that's been quietly grounding me as a mom who's building things. It's Mums at Play community. It's a space for momtrepreneurs and solopreneurs who are trying to grow something without losing themselves in the process. And what I love isn't just the business side. It's the feeling of being in a room where people understand the full picture. Show up, share what you're building, and people actually help you move it forward while still holding that space for life as it is. If you've been craving community, gentle accountability, and a place to grow without feeling like you have to have it all figured out, Map Circle is worth a look. As a member, you'll get access to special pricing on events and gatherings, early access to new Mums at Play initiatives, thoughtful touches like weekly promotions, social features, and circle-only meetups. You can head to the link in the show notes to learn more. And if you do join, tell Meru that Arcadia and Infinite Halls sent you. That's
so this is
amazing.
back in 2018, and this is
Right.
happening now.
And this is something
But she
that
was doing.
everybody knows that you need to do that now, but she was doing that based off her own instinct.
The other thing that she started doing too was those unboxing videos way back when, and that's fun. But that's something that you only see now. You see that a lot now. I just am amazed at how kids can be super innovative that way. It's grassroots almost.
It's yeah. And
Or I'm just really old and we only get it like 3 years after the fact.
as parents, I think there's quite a dilemma, right? Because you had a child who you had some very clear rules about, aligned with your family values around creativity and being useful, right? This notion of being useful on your technology. And there's a moment when I think many parents in your situation might have shut it down, right? Because there's some lying here, some
Yeah.
safety concerns, age limits, but you did not. And I'd love to understand why not. What stopped you from pulling the plug and getting very authoritative?
I think because, well, okay, so there is this advice that I got from someone ages ago, and this was not even about parenting teenagers. This was about, they were like, when you're older and your kids are adults, one of the ways that you're going to have to change the way that you parent is just to share them what you're concerned about. Don't tell them what to do. You have to learn how to be a good bystander and just say, I'm worried about this. And I remembered that.
Okay.
And even though she wasn't an adult, she was venturing into very adult territory.
Okay.
And I also didn't want to be a hypocrite and be like, I want you to be creative, but only within my rules of what you can be.
Mhm.
Because I didn't know that she was really into business. I thought that she was my performing arts kid.
Right.
Like, that's what I thought.
Right.
I remember taking pause and being like, how am I going to do this? Because I don't want to ground her. I basically just took her aside and I said, look, you lied to me. That's wrong. But I just want to explain to you why. And the reason why I didn't want you to come all the way out here. I was like, I didn't know where you were. I know Hong Kong's safe, but if something happened to you, I wouldn't know. And so that's the only reason why I need to know where you are. And you should really not be lying to me about where you are. I think she understood that. She heard the concern and the love. There's a lot of love in my voice. And I said, look, I get that you're doing this. So we just kind of made some rules around it. She had to tell me where she was going. She had to text me when she got there, stuff like that, like parent stuff. It was also kind of a lesson for me because I was like, well, in her head, she was like, that's only about 6 subway stops from where you let me go. It was
Right.
like, couldn't I go there? Because she does know that Hong Kong is safe.
Right.
I'm not going to squash her. I was thinking, I learned a lesson too, which is why do we say you guys can't go all the way to Kowloon? It is only a few subway stops from where she's going. In her head, it's maybe even a little closer.
You chose conversation over punishment, right? You chose compassion over punishment. You didn't want to crush her momentum.
No, I didn't want to. She was so into it. She had a little ledger and everything about what she was keeping track of and who was buying. And she was so into her customers and
Yeah. Yeah.
having something in the store that people would want. And she was so into it.
She couldn't articulate the fact that she was ready for more. And you couldn't articulate what that meant because you were learning about what this business was.
Who thinks that their 10 and 11-year-old is into this stuff?
Right.
But she figured it out and she was really happy about being able to make a little money for herself.
So letting her continue this meant for yourself living with a little discomfort, right? Because you're not going to know everything. And then going forward, you're like, this is a pretty steep learning curve for myself. And then you have to resist the urge to manage or optimize, like helping her with her business. So there's real tensions here. And so what was the hardest part for you as a parent during this time, watching her after you knew going forward?
I think the hardest part was acknowledging the fact that I really couldn't micromanage, if I'm being honest. As parents, we really want our kids not to be disappointed, first of all, not to fail. I was just like, well, if this is a business, then she needs to be able to do this and this, and we should get investors. I was already thinking about this and starting to talk it through with her, but she was just not interested. She had to figure it out on her own. She was turned on by the fact that it was her thing. It was her engagement. And I have to say that I think it really informs a lot of her own decisions because she's going to be finishing school soon.
Right.
And I asked her, I said, what do you want to do after you graduate? And like, I think I would like to work for a brand first. I said, oh, don't you want, as a parent, creative parent, whenever I was like, why don't you make your own store? And she was like, because it's really hard to make your own store, Mom. There's nothing that I can see as my store right now.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, right. I wanted to say, you know that. But then I was like, oh, she knows that. She knows how hard it is to kind of scavenge. And she also probably knows the wrong things that she did in the business. So, she wants to work for a store, actual brand, so that she can learn some of the ropes and then maybe venture out. Whereas other people might be like, oh, I want to have my own store, because I've never had it before. But she did that when she was like 11 or 14, 15.
I mean, she wasn't playing business. She was learning business. When
she was learning business.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. And she knows herself and what she wants to be better because she experimented with this technology in that way. Her studying fashion business management includes strategy, marketing, trend forecasting. It's amazing. And so when you look back, it's clear you see the through line, right? From that disobedience to where she is now and how it could possibly forecast her future.
It was a big lesson for me as a parent, basically to let them be and let her fail and just explain to her rather than punish her. This is why I had that rule. Okay. It wasn't like I had all the answers. I think sometimes you're just like, oh, 10-year-olds can't go more than 4 subway stops. But why not? That's something that's willing to learn.
Christine, one of the things that we've always talked about, and I have borrowed it relentlessly in my conversations with Infinite Screen Times, is technology as tools, not toys. And I see this in this example, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, as parents, we look at our kids playing on Instagram, playing video games. It's playing, it's being useless, it's brain rot, it's too much. YouTube, it's terrible content, right? And as parents, we end up panicking. What do you think parents get wrong when kids show early entrepreneurial instincts using their technology?
One of the things that I know I got wrong before I attended, I believe, your first infinite screen time one where it was a parent and child playing the video game.
Yes.
So one of the things my kids will tell you that I always say is turn off the electronics, no electronics. You can do anything else, just not electronics. My two sons were really into video games. My younger son, he has an older brother who's 5 years older. This
Right.
is something that usually happens when you have like
This
5 years difference between. So the younger one is more exposed to things that the older one is playing with. I remember him saying, I want to play this game. And it was something for like 16 and up. And I was like, no, you're 12. I don't think it's good. I'm not going to buy it for you. And he was just like, why? And I said, because it says 16 and up and it's got violence and all of that. And he was just like, but you let me watch Lord of the Rings. We watched that as a family. He was like, remember the scene with Urkai?
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty bloody. And I was like, I know. We got this whole discussion about how like I had to admit that one of my things that I was maybe buying into is video games make you more violent. And I remember you and I were talking about this, and I attended your video game and parent session.
You're right.
And only when I started playing with Milo,
Right.
playing it, and I was amazed at the dexterity. I could not do the whole jump and fight and make a fortress or whatever it was that we were doing. I could see that the
Right.
world is different because kids' brains are different. All of a sudden, it was like I woke up. I took the red pill and I woke up because I was just like, oh my God, curriculum has to be different. Books have to be different. My brain could not figure that out. And
Right.
so one of the things that I think we parents sometimes do wrong, and I was also doing it wrong, is that we're just saying, turn it off, but we're not really saying like, what is it that you're doing? Oh, what do you find that funny? Okay, so what happens when that guy does that?
Huh.
What strategy are you using? Instead, we're just like, oh my God, that guy's shooting. Turn it off. It's violent.
Right.
Stop playing it.
Right.
So I think that was a big thing. And even now it's great because my kids are, Milo is 19 and Max is 24. And
Right.
so there's a lot of crazy stuff out there on the internet. And now I'll be like, what is up with this, horrible meme?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for you? And now it's a talking point rather than I hope you're not doing that. I hope you're not
Right.
doing this.
Right.
It's been
Interesting.
refreshing too, because I actually am seeing that my kids have very traditional values. In fact, my daughter Maya keeps telling me, she's like, I removed the app from my phone. So I was like, you didn't respond to me on Instagram. She's like, oh, I delete the app because I notice that I get really upset and I get really obsessively. And before I know it, I've wasted time and I haven't done this. She has come to this on her own.
Yeah.
And she's actually told me, she's like, when I have a kid, I'm not going to get him an iPad. And I was like, oh, okay, this is great. So much for my permissive parenting, which I thought was failed. But there, by talking about it, I feel like we built values together.
Huh.
So one very fascinating thing that I didn't realize was my kids are just not into the AI thing, especially AI and art. Because I sent Milo a music video that was half created by AI, and the kids were like, "No, that's done by AI." And I was like, "But isn't that cool?" And they were like, "No, not really." And then Max got really into this whole discussion about like, creating things is what makes us human. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so interesting that they're feeling this way.
That's fascinating because those early conversations talking about technology, not in a binary way, good or bad, but more in a nuanced way,
Very
that you
curious way.
gave them an opportunity to have a point of view that they will share now with you, particularly with new technology, because a lot of this stuff didn't exist even a few years ago, right? And
Yeah.
this is something that I ask all of my guests. It helps to reflect on who we are now versus who we were before when we were parenting them. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing in those early years, what would it be?
Myself as a parent. Oh, I feel like life has forced me to change anyway, because probably as an early parent, we always want to protect our kids
Yeah.
from everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. Like, you don't want them to go to the park or stranger danger and all of this other stuff. I feel like maybe the internet and crowdsourcing kind of fuels this paranoia that you're in danger all the time. Sometimes I feel like we have a tendency to want to micromanage their safety, their well-being. If you're always worried about someone being in danger, you're going to kind of make them anxious.
Right.
Because they're just going to feel like they're not capable and there's danger out there.
Right.
This is
That was
something that
very
I've
wise.
learned the hard
Yeah.
way.
Thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation.
Amazing conversation. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, Arcadia. I had such a great time with your parent and child workshop. You should do more of those.
Oh, thank you. It was called Fortnite is an F word.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Sometimes you have to be left to your own devices.
Yeah, sometimes. Christine's story reminds us that parenting rarely unfolds in the way we plan. Sometimes it asks us to sit with discomfort, to hold the line on safety while we loosen our grip on control. What looked like disobedience at first, lying about age, going farther than allowed, turned out to be something more complicated, a child reaching for readiness before she had words for it. This wasn't a story about ignoring rules or giving unlimited screen time. It was about a parent choosing curiosity over punishment, conversation over shutdown, and trust over fear, even when the trust felt risky. This podcast is a project of Infinite Screen Time, the organization I founded in 2020 to help parents raise screen-smart kids while embracing the infinite possibilities of technology. The goal isn't answers, it's understanding. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at akim@infinitescreentime.com or use the link in the description to learn more. Until next time, I'll see you around the infinite halls.